Hey everybody, this is Joshua checking in with Communitas Christi. I hope everybody's doing okay. I wanted to make a video today addressing a very heavy subject where maybe to those that it affects more than those that it doesn't is the concept that we may feel or you may feel that the world is kind of cruel and or your existence in this world is kind of cruel, especially in the paradigm that you don't like the way you see things. The world as it is seems to be flawed and seems to be wasteful or dark or unnecessarily evil or with suffering and whatnot. And I'm going to start with a expression I heard a long time ago that always stayed with me. Man dies and he goes to heaven and he meets God, and God's asking him, "So, what did you think about life? How was your experience?" And the guy is like, "Oh, well, it was good. It was good. I can't complain. Um I had a good childhood, reasonably good. My parents weren't too crazy. I went to a good college. I ended up with a nice company. Got a beautiful wife. Had three amazing children that are my life. I guess were my life. And yeah, I mean, I just retired. Got to live past 75, which I never thought I might. And yeah, I can't complain. I did okay." And God looks at him and says, "You can be honest with me." And the guy says, "Well, God," says, "be honest. I always wondered, why was the world kind of messed up in the background? Like, my life was okay, but I always saw the kids starving over in Africa or the Asians having to work those long, hard hours in what seemed like really bad conditions just to make crap that the rest of us didn't need. And no wars that never seemed to end. And I don't know, God. Overall, I just, I don't know. Why didn't you do something about all those things, God? I mean, it's like I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm wondering. I'm like, why would the most powerful person in the universe not take any action about all these things that are bothering me so deeply? And God looked at him with a deep sadness and compassion in his eyes, and he said, "I did do something, my son. I sent you." And that saying always hit me right in my spiritual heart, so to speak. And it's kind of shaped a lot of my perspective. And one of the expressions that I've evolved from it is, God doesn't hate you, He sent you. And it's a call to action because sometimes when I'm looking, especially in the past, when I'm looking at the state of the world, it deeply was frustrating. It was painful to see. And it felt like it was an extra cruelty to know that these other people are suffering, and simultaneously I get to know that they're suffering and I get nothing. I got very minimal things that I feel I can even do about it. And so the evolution and call to arms that has come from that parable, as it were, and my personal experience in life, um, is that if I was sent here completely powerless and I had nothing to do about anything, then that would be kind of cruel, I think, of God. And my father's not cruel. I can go in the woods. I can look at my own life and all the blessings and amazing people and experiences that I've had. My God is not cruel. So if these things bother me, then I should probably try to do something about it. And I have been gifted with intelligence and perspective and analytical ability like few that I know. And of those with more, you know, intellectual prowess that I have met, practically none of them are interested in the same problems that I study, that I'm worried about, that I'm focused on. So I'm in a unique position with a unique set of gifts and a unique passion, and that's why I'm making videos. In the beginning of this journey, I wanted to start with making communities, and I believe that naturally and organically over time, the community concept would take on, and more people would join, and eventually kind of just organically passively take over the planet, where everybody can be living in their own community. And then once the majority of humanity is living within these communities, you've kind of got a level of beautiful autonomy that's already established, where there's really no point to mega corporations or governments trying to take advantage of anybody. There's nobody really left to take advantage of. You've lost the majority of the market, the labor market, and the consumer market, and everybody's happy and everybody's taking care of their own stuff, so they don't really need you anymore. Kind of like, you know, a genuine peaceful revolution. Now, things are beginning to accelerate at a level I can't readily ignore. And there are so many factors that are out to consider if you're thinking from a regular human perspective on what's happening over the next year to 10 years. It's almost impossible for anybody to try to find some sanity if we look out into the world these days. I've been experiencing a decent amount of inner turmoil, pain, and suffering over the last, say, year, about a year, because starting at maybe a few months over a year, because I was seeing things happening along the food supply that was very disturbing. And I was already worried about some other big global things that had been happening. There was already some other major events, and then I started seeing specific stresses within the food supply, and then I started noticing geological weather phenomena that was very disturbing and newsworthy, and not getting the attention that it deserved. Meanwhile, the news was nonstop hawking about problems and issues and warmongering in other countries. Uh, I saw what looked like pretty much an apocalyptic vision of one of the biggest cities in the world, nonetheless famous in big cities in America, Fort Lauderdale, and maybe not like huge population wise, but notoriety. I mean, as far as newsworthy goes. And I saw some amateur drone footage of what looked like an apocalyptic. The streets were completely flooded. Cars were all skewed sideways. Lights were blinking, just flashing, and the mainstream media was basically silent. And there's been a lot of other weather issues, including a record breaking or borderline double record breaking hurricane that just devastated Acapulco, Mexico. And 99% of the footage is on a rather slow moving skirmish between Israel and Hamas. the double record on the hurricane, for those curious, was people went to bed basically at 9 p.m. to a tropical storm offshore, and they were getting devastated by 12 p.m., 1 a.m. by 200 plus mile per hour winds, as a tropical storm slash depression had accelerated to a Cat 5 plus storm in that couple hours. That was one of the records. And then apparently also may have been one of the most powerful storms. I think it just missed both records, but that's not normal that both, anyways, two different storms, two different records that are not nice. And I don't really think that's where the nation's attention is. And weather disturbances are way bigger of an issue than anything else. Theoretically, we could fire a government, we could vote for new people, we can change global conflict issues, theoretically. But weather seems to be kind of out of our hands. And if it's in anybody's hands, it's not on the public consciousness. And that's a big deal itself. So finances, food, materials, stuff, weather, anomalies, and other geological happenings. That's enough. But back to God doesn't hate you, he sent you. What are we to make out of that with all these other things going on? And one of the things I was inspired to by God more recently, as asking that exact question, is like, what do you do with all these things going wrong at the same time, or seemingly falling apart? And God's answer was that basically they had forgotten the first and second commandment. Mainly the first commandment is the most important one. Love your God with all your heart and all your soul. And then, according to our teacher Jesus, love your neighbor with all your heart, which I really think is, when you see everything as God, and you should love God with all your heart, that leaves no room. That leaves no room for hate. You're not going to love God. You're not going to love anything even remotely okay and have hate in your heart at the same time. So just by following that first commandment, you fix 90+% of every single problem with humanity, just by following one rule. And as long as whatever your vision of God is does not create chaos and harm to others, or that's somehow part of your practice of loving your God, then it doesn't even need to be a specific God. Just loving the creator of everything, like doing that in your heart, all of us, to whatever your deity of choice is going to be, the love part, the love to the higher part of where everything's coming from. That's the magic. That's the cycle of energy that breaks us out of this very selfish and egoic states of mind that's tearing the world apart. But because God and Jesus knew that we're not that awesome, we'll be like, oh yeah, I love God. God, creator of everybody and everything, I love you with all of my heart. But what's that damn neighbor up to? Because this was as obvious 2,000 years ago as it is today. That's why the second most important commandment, according to our teacher Jesus, is love your neighbor as yourself. Just a reminder, because somehow, with the one rule of loving God with all your heart, God, Jesus, we know when we hear it, we're like, yeah, that makes sense, that checks out. We're going to mess that up. So reminder is, that includes the neighbor you don't like. More wisdom, perspective on that is that includes the other. It includes the other person. The person of the other party, the person of the other country, the person of the other race or religion or sexuality or gender or whatever division it is that everybody on this side of the line is good, but if they're that, they're not okay no more. That's what that means. Love that person. That's the neighbor. But again, go back to the first. So God doesn't hate us. God's instructing us on how to love, how to be good children of God. Then it really comes down to perspective. If this world is allowed to be better, or perhaps we're allowed to be existing in a better version of this world, but we have to choose that and we have to act like that. And as it comes to the way of things that is, I don't think we're going to see a clean transition, but I also think it's up to us between this world and the world that's going to come. The original inspiration God gave me to circle back around on it was He's leaving no direction but up, meaning that all the ways that man would try to escape his calling, his responsibility to himself, to his fellow man, and to his creator, all these other avenues that man has built himself up materialistically, wealth, false spirituality, false power, political power, celebrity status, I just guess on and on. All these false idols, these things that people add to themselves to try to become greater than their fellow man and abuse them, it seems, is kind of par for the course. Once people think they're better, then they don't really care what they're doing to the lesser, which is specifically anti-Christ in thinking. Because Jesus said, of all the different instructions, Jesus said, when he grabbed the child before him, he said, what you do to these, the least among you, you do directly to me. So to live in a world and live in a way where we subjugate the children and the weak and the poor and the third world people, we subjugate everybody so that, we can individually have abundance, which we're not even that happy with in the end, which makes sense because it doesn't make sense that you would make suffering to humans and then other humans would be happy because of that. That's weird and twisted. We shouldn't expect to be happy with the way things are. Like, even if we have a pile of stuff, even if we hit the lottery, even if somebody buys us something nice and that fades off in a few days, it's because the whole big picture is lacking. And thus, the small picture, which is our individual lives, tends to fall short of the glory of what we're capable of and what we're designed for and what we truly crave. So, we have an option to do a smoother transition, but as it stands, um, it seems like people may have to be kind of ripped away from their false idols. And I don't even think that's the right metaphor, because God is way more dynamic. God is way more intelligent and softer and more profound than that. I think it's more that as the idols fall and crumble away down into the depths of darkness, of emptiness, of godlessness, people will be allowed to hold on to them and be like holding on to, it's like Gollum, and it's chunks of gold. The ship is going to make it through the storm, and it's going to find Atlantis. It's going to find the kingdom of God and all the people that want to be on it. But the ones of us that are following God's will realize that the storms that are coming up, the storms that have been called forth by the dark ones to try to consume the entire project, to basically squander God's creation in vain attempt to usurp the throne, just so ignorant. The they're the ones calling up the storm, but they've called up the powers of Hades. They don't even have control over it no more, and it will consume everything, including them. But the children of light are being called, and this is all just a big metaphor. I'm kind of freestyling here, and we're starting to throw the gold painted rocks, as it were, overboard from the ship of humanity. Like, oh, this is gonna sink us. We need to lose weight. We need to lose weight. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it to Atlantis. We're gonna eat some salt water. We're gonna have to get smashed in the face a bunch of times. We're gonna have to hold on when we can't see and we don't feel like holding on. We're gonna have to hold on to faith. We're gonna have to hold on to principle. We're gonna have to hold on to morality, even though it feels like the skies are opening up and trying to destroy us from on top, while the ocean is rising up to consume us. We have to hold on to the ship. I'm thinking of the Monsters and Men. There was ship will carry us safe to shore. A little chills there. Yeah, and as some of these things, as some of these false idols are getting removed from the boat, a lot of people are attached to them, and they're going to stick with the idol. And to them, there is no direction. There is no particular morality. They don't sense the direction of this ship and the humanity as a whole, and they don't know there's something coming on the other side of that storm. They don't sense it. They're not tapped in. They don't want to be tapped in. When you start moving the rock, you're going to see, or as you see the rock start moving, you'll see people just attach quietly, blindly to the rock, and you'll say, hey, what are you doing? Don't attach to that. And they'll be like, oh, this is my precious. And I fear, and I think that these videos, this calling, and the work that we can do together as a community here can help alleviate and remove some of this, if not all of it. But at this point, I fear that in that transition, in that metaphor, we are going to have to learn not to be so attached to the people that are attached to the things that must pass. So that's a big one. That's a heavy one. On the flip side, God doesn't hate you. He sends you. This is the work we're here to do. If you're like me, if you're vibing with what I'm vibing with, then you're kind of willing to do and sacrifice anything to see the world in a better place, in a more holy place, more balanced place. And you probably realize organized religion and government and rich celebrities and business owners and whatnot are not our heroes that they've marketed themselves to be. You're the hero. I'm the hero. We're the heroes. We're the heroes of our own story. We're the ones that have the vision. And we're the ones that are going to determine to see our way through the storm, to be happy together on the other side, where we can all rejoice in a world that's full of compassion and love and peace for all. I'm going to end on that note. One love, everybody. Peace.